Mr. Speaker, several times over my 29 years in Congress, I have wondered whether there are any fiscal conservatives at the Pentagon. It seems that the Defense Department is just like every other gigantic bureaucracy. When it comes to money, the refrain is always more, more, more. On November 14th, the House passed what one Capitol Hill paper described as a $700 billion compromise defense bill. It was $80 billion over the budget caps and many billions more than even President Trump had requested. I opposed almost all the major initiatives of the Obama administration, but it was false to say that the Defense Department had been depleted or eviscerated during those years, or that now we must rebuild the military. In fact, public relations experts in future years should conduct studies about how the Defense Department has been able to convince the public it has been cut when it is now getting more money than ever. Defense Department appropriations have more than doubled since 2000. In addition, the department has gotten extra billions in several supplemental or emergency appropriations bills. The military construction bill is a separate bill that has added another $109.5 billion over the last 10 years. It would be hard to find any U.S. military base any place in the world that has not had several new buildings constructed over the last few years. In fiscal year 2016, we spent over $177 billion on new equipment, tanks, guns, etc. We have spent similar amounts for many years. Most of this equipment does not wear out after or have to be replaced after just 1 year. It is ironic that the only president in the last 60 or 70 years who has tried to rein in defense spending is the only president that in that period who spent most of his career in the military. In Evan Thomas's book, Ike's Bluff, when told by his top staffer that he could not reduce defense spending, President Eisenhower said if he gave another star to every general who cut his budget, quote, there would be such a rush to cut costs you'll have to get out of the way. The book also quotes Eisenhower as saying, quote, heaven help us if we ever have a president who doesn't know as much about the military as I do. Therein lies an explanation for a big part of what has caused such much excessive and or wasteful defense spending, and the willingness, even at times eagerness, to go to war and support permanent, never-ending wars. Only 18% of the current Congress has ever served in the military, in any branch of the military. Members are afraid if they do not vote for an increase in defense spending, or if they question waste by the military, some demagogue will accuse them of not supporting the troops. It would be a huge understatement to say that I usually do not agree with New York Times editorials, but the Times editorial board on October 22nd published an editorial entitled America's Forever Wars, pointing out that the U.S. has been at war continuously since the attacks of 9/11 and now has troops in, quote, at least 172 countries. The board wrote that so far the American people have, quote, seemed to accept all this militarism, but it's a very real question, the Times said, whether in addition to endorsing these commitments, which have cost trillions of dollars and many lives over 16 years, they will embrace new entanglements. The Times added that the Congress, quote, has spent little time considering such issues in a comprehensive way or debating why all these deployments are needed. Backing these words up was a cartoon in the October 25th issue of Politico, a Capitol Hill newspaper. The cartoon showed 6 senators sitting at a hearing. The first senator, reading a newspaper, says, "Who knew we had troops in Niger?" The second says, "Heck, we don't even know how the military budget gets spent." Finally, the cartoon shows a senator who's saying, "War is hell. I say we just give the Pentagon an extra $80 billion and call it a day." Washington Post columnist Richard Cohen, himself a veteran, as I am, wrote on October 23rd, quote, "But there is something else at work here. The slavish veneration of now accorded the military. You can see it every time someone in uniform testifies before Congress. Since now less than 1% of the people serve in the military, it may be that many people who never served feel, perhaps even subconsciously, that they must bend over backwards to show their patriotism. However, it is not patriotic. It is not unpatriotic to oppose wasteful defense spending or very unnecessary permanent forever wars. President Reagan once said, quote, our troops should be committed to combat abroad only as a last resort and when no other choice is available. We have far too many leaders today who seem to want to be new Winston Churchills and who are far too eager to send people to war. No true fiscal conservative could ever justify spending many billions more than even President Trump requested. Our national debt recently went over the $20 trillion level. A few days ago, it was reported that the deficit for fiscal 2017 was $666 billion. This fiscal year, it may be even higher. Conservatives used to be against huge deficit spending. They also used to be against massive foreign aid. Much of what we've been doing in both Iraq and Afghanistan, training police and farmers, repairing electrical and water systems, most of this is pure foreign aid. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time and request permission to revise and extend